Welcome to Hope at Night, featuring Maya and Sanjay Thomas, Mike Tucker, Q&A with our live audience, and host Anil Kanda. Today's episode, how can you find and keep love? And here's your host, Anil Kanda.
Welcome to today's show, where we're diving deep in the world of dating and relationships. Whether you or someone you know is single and ready to mingle, trudging through the complicated phase, or somewhere in between, I hope you'll find some valuable principles for your relationships. Up first, we have a couple that's been through the dating trenches, walked down the aisle, and just added a tiny new member to their family. Dr. Maya Thomas, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a PhD, and her husband, a business owner and certified life coach, Sanjay Thomas, are here to share their personal journey through heartaches to happiness. Please welcome to Hope at Night, Dr. Maya and Sanjay Thomas. I feel like this is Team India right here.
Yeah.
We need to rename this episode to India with Love. All right. Dr. Maya, I understand that you were on a relationship fast before you met Sanjay. Why in the world were you on a relationship fast?
So I called it my man fast. I realized around maybe the 10th dysfunctional relationship that I had just been dating the same person with a different face, and it was not going well, and the common denominator was me. So I took some time to really figure out what's going on with me, what do I want, what's the vibe I'm giving off.
Now, why did Sanjay break this fast?
He broke the fast because I think after that year of really getting in touch with me and what I wanted, I was open and ready to be able to be in a healthy relationship, to accept and give love, and he was waiting for me.
Wow. So how long was this fast that you were on?
It was a year, a full 365 days.
Wow, I'm sure you counted each day, right?
I did.
Now, what were some of the things you learned during this relationship fast?
Yeah, it occurred to me that I was doing a lot of things to be appealing to dating partners. The way I would dress, the way I would act, all those things. And when I didn't have that pressure, or I wasn't trying to date anybody, then it became about how do I want to present myself? Who do I want to be when I'm not trying to be appealing to anybody else? To just be in touch with me. So I learned a lot about me being authentic me.
So when you were in this relationship fast, what were some of the things you were excited about when it came to dating again?
Okay, so I'm a relational person. I love relationships. I love being loved and loving others. So I think just the dating, like going out together, enjoying new experiences together. But more than anything, I think having a best friend, somebody that I could really talk to, feel close to, show who I am to, appreciate and get to know them. I was really excited for that intimate part of it.
Now, Sanjay, what was your previous dating experience like?
Epic. Well, really, there's a lot of things that I could expound upon, Anil, but I'm going to focus kind of on the personal context within which I met Maya, because when I started dating in high school, through college, and beyond, I realized I was a serial monogamist. So I would go from one exclusive, titled romantic relationship to the other, with very little time in between to be single. And after the last relationship ended that I had before I met her, I realized I wanted to do something different. And so I purposed in my heart to not just be on the lookout for who that next dating partner would be, and focus on myself, enjoy my friends and family, and most importantly, look to God to be that satisfaction for me. So I did that for 6 months, which was an unprecedented duration for me. And it's within that context that I met her. So when I met her, it wasn't like I was looking for just that next person to fill a vacuum inside, I was content at that point. So I think it made a big difference.
Now, wait a minute. Both of you are Indian. Mm-hmm. I know you were born in India and you were born in the States. Someone may say, was it an arranged marriage that took place? Were the relatives involved? How did you guys meet each other?
I wouldn't say arranged in the traditional way. There was a mutual friend that knew both of our mothers, and that friend told our mothers about this potential, but both mothers, independent of each other, decided to just bathe it in prayer and not tell us about it. There was a mutual friend of ours that set up a gathering of many people, and that's where we met. Now, I was in on it. I knew I was there to meet her. She was oblivious to the whole thing.
Maya, what did you think when you first met Sanjay?
So at that dinner date, I looked up, I was looking at my friend's wedding album. I looked up and I saw him enter. I was like, oh, he's, cute and whatnot. And then I went back to my book because I was like, I'm not here for any of that stuff. But then, well, a lot happened.
Now, Sanjay, how did you know she was the right one?
So, in my previous dating experience, it would always eventually be these seemingly insurmountable obstacles or deal breakers that would arise. But with Maya, not only did she check off all the things on my non-negotiable list for marriage, but any issues we had, we could work through it together. So that I took as a providential green light that she was the one to take increasingly serious steps with.
So you noticed as you guys were getting to know each other, there was this mutuality in processing, in conflict resolution, and just navigating through life. And
Yes.
It was a done deal for you.
It was for me, yeah. She took a little bit longer to be convinced, but yeah.
Maya, what was your perspective? How did you know Sanjay was the right one, or when did you know Sanjay was the right one?
I had a checklist in my mind, and I think it was maybe an immature one before I met him, before my man fast. But after him, and after that man fast, really deciding that I wanted someone dependable, someone that would be consistent with me, someone that I could navigate the hard times and the good times with.
Maya, how long was this checklist?
A really long one, and he checked every one, you guys, every one. But I needed to see him in different contexts. I wanted to travel with him. I wanted us to have a big fight. Not just a little bickering to see how it would be. I wanted us to disagree. I wanted us to have fun times together. I wanted to succeed and see how he would be when I was succeeding and excelling. So I wanted different contexts to see how he would be. And each time he was consistent. He showed up. He resolved it with me. He stuck it through. And I knew if we can handle the hard times and the good times now, then we can handle anything.
Wow. Now, Sanjay, how did it feel to date someone who was a PhD, especially in marriage and family therapy? Did you feel analyzed? Did you feel evaluated through this whole process?
Well, I would just joke about, hey, do an analysis on me. I want to learn about myself. But it was not really a serious request. See, going into this relationship, I was the friend that all of my friends would come to for relationship advice. So I thought I was the enlightened male, I'm not an emotional caveman. I thought I had my stuff together. So then, dating a therapist, I learned humility very quickly. And initially, honestly, it kind of rubbed against my ego that, oh, so you're right and I'm wrong on this? And it took some time for me to, move from that mentality to appreciating the insight and education and background that she brought. And that, looking back on our relationship since dating now to marriage, like I can see that God knew that I needed to marry a therapist because the amount of personal growth and evolution as a man and as a partner is really something.
Now, Dr. Maya, when you were dating Sanjay, were you analyzing him? Were you putting together a personality profile? Was it just something that just automatic, as soon as you started hanging out with him, you started putting him in a category? Or did he blow your expectations out of the water?
I was analyzing him within an inch of his life. I'm kidding, but not really. I think it was really important for me to get a sense of who he is, but I learned humility too, because I recognized quickly that you can't put people in boxes. You know, people are a lot more than just the labels or just the first impressions or even the second impressions. So I think spending more time with him, fleshing out what I could see just as a human being, it was good. It was humbling to get that close to somebody.
Fantastic. Now, what were some of the biggest surprises you encountered in this relationship?
Going back to that whole thing of thinking I was this enlightened male, I think that I always thought that I was good at relationship problem solving. Like the analogy goes, like if the car breaks down, I can fix it. But what I realized, or what was a surprise to me, was that I'm not good at that regular, consistent, scheduled maintenance, right? Those check-ins to see, hey, how are you doing? You know, to make sure that these things don't fester into actual problems. And so that was a big surprise, or one example of me realizing I'm not as enlightened as I thought I was.
You know, it's so great. We're so wonderful at giving other people relationship advice until we enter into a relationship. Now, how did God become part of this whole relationship process?
I think for us, it was important that we be able to talk about spiritual things. Not just religious things, but spiritual things, about how we see our purpose in life, about how we see the vision of why we're put here and what we want to do together. So being able to talk about our relationship to God, our relationship to miracles, our relationship to the unknown, our relationship to what makes life worth living for us, I think those things were really important for bringing us together.
And to piggyback on that, Anil, the word intimacy is a term that's often linked to relationships, but there's very different types of intimacy, right? There's of course the physical intimacy, but there's the emotional intimacy. There's that intimacy of living with someone, in the same space all the time. But spiritual intimacy is that higher order bonding that I think because of that shared faith, we become closer because of that.
Yeah, spirituality is a dimension of who we are, not just the physical, the mental, the emotional, but there's a special bonding. I heard somebody once put it this way. They said intimacy is in to me see. It's about opening up the vulnerable parts of who you are spiritually as well. That's incredible. Dr. Maya, when you think about all the clients you've had and you think about this world today, what do you think are some common challenges people have in relationships today?
Oh, that's such a good question, and I could talk about that for days. But one of the big things that's come up with my clients a lot is this idea, especially with online dating, of on to the next, just kind of on to the next. If you don't meet all my expectations, if this isn't easy, then it's on to the next. And sometimes I think it's tough for people to stay in long-term committed relationships because it takes hard work and it takes having those difficult conversations, and it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to do that. I don't know that our society is quite ready to have I'm hoping that we are, but I think it's tough to have that when there's so many options and you're kind of on to the next.
What would you say to this generation, especially millennials that are raised on social media, that are raised to be online? Literally, it is their environment. How do you help young people to disengage from that and develop healthy relationships?
One really easy way I found, and this isn't, I'm simplifying it, it's not the end all be all, is to get in touch with the loneliness. I think there's an incredible amount of isolation and loneliness. Doesn't matter how many friends you have on social media or how big you are. I think sometimes there's this feeling of, does anybody really know me? Do I really know anybody else? Once we get in touch with that, then it's easy to have that motivation to really try to make real friendships and to maybe put the work in because you don't want that loneliness.
Now, how were you able to overcome some of these challenges in your life?
I think being intentional about self-awareness. How do I really feel? What do I really want? And then when I'm dating, being able to sift through, we can be friends, this is long-term commitment potential, and then really deciding, let me get to know you and you get to know me, that intentionality, that self-awareness of what am I bringing, how do you experience me, being able to put that work in has really made a huge difference, I think, for us and in my dating experience.
What advice would you give to parents that are raising young children to develop into healthy adults who seek after healthy relationships?
The big thing is modeling. Really take time to recognize how your kid's seeing you, not just what you say, but what you do, how you present, because they're gonna pick up on that and they're gonna do that more than anything you tell them to do or not do. So model that self-awareness, do the work, be the person you want them to be, which is so hard. It's a tall order, but it's worth it if they can see, oh, this is what healthy looks like. Oh, this is what conflict resolution looks like. Oh, this is what good self-esteem looks like.
You know, it's interesting as you are saying that. I'm sure there are lots of people who are watching this right now and wondering to themselves, I've had a string of bad relationships in my life. I come from a place of bad relationships. My family is full of toxic relationships. Mm-hmm. How would someone begin the process of healing and growing into a healthy young adult or a healthy adult?
Taking some quiet time. I think in this very, very fast-paced world, it's not easy. It's sometimes uncomfortable to take that quiet time, but I think that's the first mini step. Take some quiet time, journal if you want to, do art if you want to, talk to a friend if you want to, a therapist, a counselor that you trust, but really take some quiet time first to examine these relationships. What is toxic about them? What did you take on that you didn't realize you took on? What are you doing unconsciously that is perpetuating the toxicness in your relationship? And it starts with that quiet time to really reflect. If you can be kind to yourself in your own head, then you are much more likely to be able to take in someone else's kindness and God's kindness and love. And then the view of yourself that God has, my precious child, nothing you can do can ever separate you and me from the love that I have. That picture is so hard for us to take in when you can really recognize who you are. That, I think, that is the key to that ineffable self-esteem that just doesn't go no matter what the winds.
Sanjay, what would you say to someone who says, I'm never going to find love? I've looked everywhere. It's just not going to work out for me. Maybe I'm destined to be single for the rest of my life. What advice would you say to someone like that?
Well, I think when you are single, establishing your non-negotiables list for marriage is helpful, because then you take some time to put in filters of what you actually are going to be looking for. So it doesn't seem as just kind of left up to randomness and chance as to whether or not you find someone. But if you take some type of ownership and intentionality to develop that list, then I think you'll feel more confident going into the dating pool. The other thing is you establish the list when you're single and you enforce the list when you're in the relationship. So making sure that you don't just forget about that list when you're in the relationship, and when you see these traits, these cues that signal, hey, this is trending towards something that I don't think is a trait that I want in a life partner, then you work on that exit strategy sooner versus later.
I've enjoyed this discussion on relationships and dating. It's been enlightening. We've been talking with Dr. Maya Thomas and her husband Sanjay about their journey through dating. Their story reminds us that even when you've got a PhD in relationships, it's where the rubber hits the road that really counts. When we come back, we'll be chatting with a dating and marriage expert behind the Mad About Marriage television series and live seminars. He has written books on dating and marriage and counseled hundreds of couples. He likely has a few more tips that you'll find handy, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Hope at Night. We've just heard a dating story from our previous guests, Dr. Maya and Sanjay Thomas. But we know not every relationship goes quite that smoothly. our next guest is someone who has certainly saved more relationships than a box of chocolates and a bouquet of flowers combined. We're going to dive into some expert advice on dating, mate selection, and the all-important art of knowing when to hold on and when to say, it's not you, it's me. Please welcome to Hope at Night, Mike Tucker. Mike, how has your personal experience with relationship shaped the way that you counsel others on relationships?
Everyone is a product of your past, everyone. And you don't always recognize that until you begin to do life. When you move out of your house, when I was growing up, I thought my family was normal. And then I realized that we weren't normal. I actually was living in an abusive home. And so when I got out, it dawned on me that this is not how we do life. And so I went on a journey to figure out how to do life. And that meant a lot of self-examination. And as a result, like a lot of other therapists, you go into therapy because you need it. And so you were working out your own problems as you become a therapist. You're learning a lot, and that helps. And then you need to make sure that you draw that boundary between yourself and your problems and those that you're counseling when that day finally arrives. But my entire past was a past of dysfunction. And so when I began to recognize that, it helped me find a path to a healthier place to be and to share that with others.
Now, relationships are those things that give us the most amount of happiness in this life and the most amount of sorrow in this life
right.
as well.
That's right.
What would you say to someone who says, aren't relationships just supposed to be fun and happy? What's all this talk about therapy and sacrifice and commitment?
Yeah. And the truth is, to begin, it should be fun and happy. The little book I wrote on dating, one of the laws of dating is when you first start dating, if it's not fun and if it's not easy, then break up. Because if you're having to work that hard to make this thing work here, something's wrong someplace. Either this is the wrong person or you're the wrong person, and you need to figure that out. There comes a time, though, when you make a discovery that this is the person I want to be with. And so that's the time now to really bow into this thing and make the relationship work. It's going to take some hard work. It's going to take some effort. And there will be conflict because people are all broken. John Ortberg wrote the book, Everybody's Normal Till You Get to Know Them. And the truth is that we're all normal until we get to know each other. And then we realize there's some real brokenness there. So you're going to discover that about each other. And so the key to making a relationship work is to do the hard work. But when you do that work, the result of that hard work is so rich, so full, so wonderful, you realize you don't want to live life any other way.
Dr. Maya talked about this idea of self-evaluating, getting to know who you really are. How does that take place?
It takes place by looking, as she did, at the brokenness that she had in relationships. All right, she was the common denominator, she said. And so then she began to wonder, what does that mean? And you can figure that out by self-reflection. You can figure it out by talking to friends and family or going to a good therapist. And through that process, then you have to be open to the possibility that you really are broken, that you are a part of this problem, and then to deal with this openly and honestly. The veneer of self-sufficiency has to come off. You have to be vulnerable enough to say it's okay to be broken, and I need some fixing. I want to be a happier, healthier person. So you just do the research and you get the help and you make the progress.
Is that really possible, to become a happy, healthy adult?
Yeah. Go figure. It doesn't mean that everything is, a life of roses and banjos, because there are ups and downs in everyone's life. Happiness, though, genuine happiness, is not the absence of tragedy. It's not the absence of conflict. It's the ability to weather those things, recognizing you know who you are and whose you are. Those two knowledges begin to give you the strength to conquer things, to roll with the punches, to solve problems, or just to accept things as they are and find a way to joy anyway. So yes, it is possible.
Wonderful. Some people say you should only date someone who you plan to marry or you might marry. But how would you know that if you don't have enough time to get to know them?
There are some identifying characteristics that you can say, all right, from this pool of people is where I'm going to find my future mate. You mentioned the list that you have, and that's a good thing to have the list. There are some certain non-negotiables. I don't want to date or to marry someone who uses alcohol as a crutch. And so if they're using alcohol or other substances, this is not someone I date. It's not a bad person, it's just not the person I want to spend my time with. Eventually, I will date someone from that I will marry someone from that circle of people that I've dated. And so I have to keep that circle narrow so I don't happen to fall in love with someone who would be cancerous for my life. So when I know those basic non-negotiables, I just stay away from those people as dating partners. I can be friends, we can interact, we can have all sorts of other things together, but I'm not going to date someone who has those non-negotiables. And when I get to a non-negotiable in the relationship and I find that this exists, then rather than trying to fix that person, it's better for me to withdraw from the process. As you mentioned, the exit strategy, I think is how you said. I always just say break up. But I'm just kind of straightforward.
That's a succinct way of saying it.
Get out of this now, run.
Now, Mike, what is some idealism that we should watch out for, and actually that is pretty toxic or dangerous when it comes to relationships?
Every relationship is going to have its ups and downs. That's the first thing you have to remember. There are no perfect people. You're not going to date a perfect person, and you're not going to marry a perfect person. But then again, the people you date and the person you marry are not marrying or dating someone who's perfect either, because that would be me or you. So I think just recognizing that there is no perfect person, that a soulmate is not someone who you discover, it is someone you create. You create the experience of being soulmates together. I grew up with this idea that one day, in that crowded room, there was this spark of electricity that would jump between me and this other person, and I would know. We were soulmates, and I would never be happy with anyone other than this individual.
By the way, I used to have some idealism. I always thought to myself, and I told this to my friends, I said, hey, I'm going to marry someone I plan to rescue one day from death.
Oh, wow.
If I save them from a burning car, first question I ask them, are you single? Save them from a bear? You're not married, are you?
How'd that work out for you?
Not so good.
Yeah, not so good at all. No, but so we don't find our soulmate by rescuing them from a burning car, or
this is the problem of watching too many Bollywood movies.
That's right. You have, Bollywood. Huh? Yeah. I feel out of place here. I'm not Indian. I don't know how this works. What am I doing here? I'm the token old white man.
Mike, we'll make you an honorary Indian.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. It's very, very kind of you. But no, you don't find your mate that way. It's two broken people coming together and finally making the decision, we want to be one. But you become one by sharing your goals, your vision, your faith, your values, by having a purpose in life and working together for that purpose. And some of the purposes are the big, audacious purposes, and some of them are the mundane, everyday purposes. These are the things we do in order to get by in life. If we work as a team member, the two of us as a team, then we can have something that is valuable. I was married for 40 years before my wife died of cancer. And we were broken people. I'm more broken than she. Everybody's got baggage. She had carry-on luggage. Mine was extra charges baggage, But we grew together. We worked through our problems, and we did ministry together. We traveled the world doing seminars. We did 121 Man About Marriage seminars all over the world. We did television together. We pastored churches together. We raised daughters together. It was a wonderful experience. When she died, I was so broken and so alone. But we got to that point of intimacy and being soulmates because we decided to. We worked on it. We overcame the brokenness. We came to the point where this is who we are. This is where we're going in our life. I trust you. You trust me. And together we're going to make this thing happen. That's a soulmate.
That's wonderful. Mike, you've been sharing about relationship and the mechanics and logistics and some of the challenges within relationships. But we don't live also in an agrarian society where people are introduced to each other because their dad is a farm owner and their other parents are farm owners and they introduce the kids. We live in a world today where people are separated. Sometimes self-isolation that's taking place. We live in a world today where people meet each other purely online.
Yeah.
How do people find other candidates, I should use the word candidates, but other individuals that might be great for a relationship?
Yeah.
Where do they find them?
You go where healthy people go. I found I've remarried since the death of my wife. I found both of my mates in church settings because the healthier spiritual people tend to go to religious meetings. And that's what I wanted. Spirituality has always been an important part of my life. And so it was in those settings that I found these individuals. You go to places where healthy people will be. You commit with other healthy people. You engage in their lives. And you're going to find broken people doing these things, but healthy people want to do those things as well.
I heard it, somebody once said, if you're looking for a bear, go where bears are.
Right.
Looking for a lion, go where lions are.
Right.
And if you're looking for someone who is healthy or someone who is in the process of growing, look for where they might be.
Volunteering, worshiping, those kinds of things are where healthy people go. They give of themselves. They recognize a power greater than themselves. They worship that power, and they move together to benefit mankind.
Beautiful. What are some red flags of dating?
I would say that anyone who is in any way violent, hitters hit, abusers abuse, and non-hitters don't hit. I've never hit a woman, I've never hit anybody. I had one fight in 6th grade, a bully, and I finally got up the courage to hit him. It's the only fight I ever had. I won it, and I retired from the ring, undefeated. But I don't hit. Violence is not a part of my life. That's one thing. But you look for those histories of things in their lives. If this is a person who does not believe in God and you believe in God, that's something that's a red flag for me. If this is a person who's had multiple relationships and everyone says that this is a scoundrel or a bad person, you ought to listen. You ought to listen to that. We create our reputation. Sometimes reputations are not earned, but most times there's something behind that. I think also looking at a family of origin can tell you something about a person. It doesn't mean that that person's off the list if they've recovered from the mess of their family of origin, but it's something you need to be aware of. I married Gail Whitaker from Tulsa. She had one of the healthiest families I'd ever seen in my life, and it blew me away.
What were some of the characteristics of this healthy family origin?
They loved each other. They accepted each other as they were. They encouraged each other rather than tearing each other down. They had commitments together. They had faith together. Everyone had a place where they belonged in this relationship. They didn't have to be a cookie cutter. Everyone was different, and yet everyone was loved and embraced as they were. And then they had a family that reached out to others to try to do good in the world.
Mike, you talked about this idea essentially of something that is a deal breaker. But how do you delineate between something that is a deal breaker and something that is potential for growth?
Deal breakers are going to be the biggest things, whereas like abuse, you don't grow through abuse. I'm sorry, but you don't. Most abusers are narcissistic personality disorder. The recovery rate for that is minuscule. It's very small. Only 1% of abusers ever stop without long-term significant professional intervention by someone licensed and trained in this area. Addictions are deal breakers because that changes. Even if you recover from addiction, you're a different person after the addiction.
Now, you said addictions. What kind of addictions are you talking about?
Sex, drugs, alcohol, you name it. An addictive personality is an addictive personality. It doesn't mean they can't be happy. It doesn't mean they can't heal from this. You're more likely to heal from an addiction than you are from the personality disorder that results in abuse. But for me, if that is not something that's been dealt with in the past, if there's not sobriety now and a long-term record of sobriety, that's something that I don't want to engage with right now. I wish them well, I love them, support them, but unless it's been demonstrated that this is no longer a part of their life, then I need to back away from that. If the belief system is so diametrically opposed, if one is a believer, the other is not, or if you both believe, but the religions are so opposite to one another, that there's just no middle ground, those are red flags. Other things that can be controlled, can be changed. If I tend to run away from conflict, all right, that's something we can work on. I can stand my ground, and we can find baby steps in order to make this a little bit better. If my communication patterns have been negative, those can be identified and changed. Stanley and Markman out of University of Denver and John Gottman out of Washington have both found 4 negative communication patterns that destroy marriages. In fact, they become the #1 predictor of a failed marriage. You can identify them, and you can change them. You don't have to continue to.
What are some of them?
Well, I was trained by Stanley and Markman, and Gottman's communication factors are similar to Stanley and Markman, but he refers to his as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. But Stanley and Markman came up with escalation. That's when an argument starts over something small and it builds in intensity, sometimes in volume, until something very small results in something big. Leaving socks on the floor ends up with I'm leaving you. You can't figure out how did we get from socks to divorce. I don't know, and so arguments tend to blow up quickly. Invalidation, that's where you put down the thoughts, feelings, values, or words of the partner, either intentionally or unintentionally, overtly or subtly. That's very destructive of relationships. You've got avoidance and withdrawal, where you avoid conflict, you avoid talking about the problems by either clamming up, agreeing too quickly, leaving the room, running away, all sorts of things of that nature. And then you've got negative interpretations, where I interpret more negatively than you intended what you've said or what you've done. And it has to be a lot of mind reading that goes into this. It's negative mind reading, which is always destructive of relationships. Those are the 4 that Stanley and Markman have identified, and Gottman has got 4 as well, very similar to Stanley and Markman. There are nuances of difference. Those become the best predictor of divorce that we've really found.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
We need to hear more of this.
Yeah.
Imagine somebody comes to you, Mike, and they said, hey, I've met somebody. There are no red flags here.
Yeah.
I don't see any issues. There's an affirmation from my community about this person. How do we continue to build a great foundation for a healthy, happy relationship and marriage? What would you say?
You continue to do the things that brought you together. First of all, if you're having fun together, you don't ever want to stop those. But I think that it's also important as a couple to begin to reach out. How do we help people around us? What can we do together to demonstrate our love, not just for each other, but for our world? Can we volunteer at an orphanage? Can we volunteer at a nursing home? Can we do something at our local church or synagogue, whatever it is that you happen to be? What are the things that we can do together to volunteer to help others? And that begins to add different dimensions to your life. The other thing that you do is you embrace a positive spirituality together. I find that with a lot of Christian marriages, when I can change their view of God, I change the relationship. Viewing a God of anger, of harshness, who's punitive, condemnatory, who wants to send you to hell, who's looking for the mistake, that destroys marriages because it releases hormones in the brain that are toxic, that begin to create the fight or flight response. And so prayer to that God actually creates more of that negativity in your mind, but it also destroys your relationships. But when you worship a God of grace, of compassion, who is intimately involved in your life, a God who longs to save you rather than exclude you, a God who cares about what's going on with you, then that releases a different set of hormones in the brain, which enhances the experience of euphoria. Actually broadens the ability to embrace and retain new concepts. It makes you, it increases the levels of compassion in your life, simply by worshiping and praying to a God who is positive. And a lot of marriages are very legalistic. If they have a legalistic religion, I believe personally that a legalistic religion in a relationship, that relationship is definitely an abusive relationship, because legalism resorts to power and control.
Manipulation.
And which are the elements of every abusive relationship on the planet, power and control. And so a legalistic, harsh, condemnatory view of God creates the same kind of marriage. We become like the God we worship.
Somebody once said, the devil's masterpiece is not the prostitute, It's the Pharisee.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of research has been done for decades, finding out who has the highest levels of marital satisfaction. And Christians as a whole usually have higher levels of marital satisfaction than what the world in general has. I did, using the same instruments, I researched a conservative denomination that struggles with the gospel. And their levels of marital satisfaction, they did not get the Christian boost. They came out at the same levels or worse than the world in general, marital satisfaction. The divorce rates were better because the shame and the stigma of divorce kept them in the marriage. But the marital satisfaction rates and the happiness in those marriages was not at the same level as most Christian marriages are. The thing that makes a difference is the gospel. When you understand the love and the acceptance of the Father for you, and you are able to live that and give the same thing to others rather than condemning or judging, it changes your relationships, it changes your marriage, it changes everything about your life.
Mike, this is amazing stuff you're sharing, along with what you guys shared as well. I'm excited about where this conversation is going. Well, folks, if Pastor Mike Tucker has taught us anything today, it's that getting into a relationship isn't just about finding someone that makes your heart flutter, though that's nice too. It's about finding someone whose values, communication skills, and boundaries align with yours, and who, let's be honest, doesn't make you want to pull your hair out. I've learned that while love can sometimes be complicated, it doesn't have to be chaotic. I've also learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can say is, it's not you, it's me, but mostly it's you. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll be taking some questions from our live audience, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We've had some great conversations with Dr. Maya and Sanjay Thomas and Mike Tucker, but now it's time to hear from our live audience. What questions do you have about dating and relationships? Right over there.
Pastor Mike, you told us the beautiful story of you and your wife and your family, and you mentioned how she passed away of cancer. You told us that she was your soulmate. How do you feel about your current wife, and do you believe that people can have more than one soulmate?
Wouldn't it be awkward if right now I said, now we're just kind of sticking it out, you know? I believe that you can have more than one soulmate. I married a woman who is also engaged in ministry, and we've learned to do ministry together. We do ministry separately, but also together, and when one is taking the lead, the other supports. And so soulmates are created, and we've decided to be soulmates. And so that means that we share values, we share purposes and vision and our faith, and we have a huge value on helping people and doing something to benefit our world. She is a woman from Canada, and I'm from Texas, and we got married in Dallas when she was 108. She almost changed her mind that day. She was a single mom for 26 years. I have tremendous respect for this woman, which means I've gained another daughter too, by the way. I've got 3 now. But yes, you can have more than one soulmate.
Mike, what you're saying about a soulmate isn't something that is destined in the stars, but rather it's something that is created through intentionality, in commitment, in process, and relationship.
Very different people can become soulmates. But the key is you've got to decide what are our keys, what is our core, and what are we going to focus on, what are we committed to. And part of that commitment, not just is a spiritual commitment, but how we're going to live our lives. And I'm committed to her. I'm committed to Pam. Pam is a beautiful gospel singer and has a heart for people. She has compassion. And we found that there's an intersection of our skills where we can do ministry together, and that gives us joy.
Any other questions? Right over there.
What is meant by legalistic religion or relationship?
A legalistic religion is one that is based on performance. God will love me if I do this. God will love me if I stop doing that. God will save me if I can do X, Y, and Z and not do A, B, and C. It is performance. So in other words, I love you if. That translates to our relationships then, I love you if. We become like the God we worship. And so that translates into our relationships as well. Pam, I'll love you if you'll do this, otherwise I withhold my love from you. That's legalism. It's also power and control, and it is the basis of every abusive relationship on the planet. So whenever we miss the essence of the gospel, God loves us, period. And yes, do we change? Yes, because He indwells us, He makes us better people. All right, so He changes. Change is a part of human existence. Even though I love Pam unconditionally, she is changing and I'm changing because we are human beings who are flawed and we have that capacity. But the change is motivated by love, not by a desire to be loved by God or loved by my spouse. I am loved, therefore I want to change in order to please her. Same thing happens with my relationship with God. So a performance-based religion is toxic. It says I have to perform for God to love me and God to accept me. No. God loves you because you are broken. He died because you needed Him to, and He indwells you and He changes you. That's healthy spirituality.
Any other questions? Right over there.
What advice do you have for people who have never been in a relationship?
I would say that using that time to get to know yourself, self-awareness is such an important thing in any relationship, and the best time to really cultivate that is when you have the opportunity to be single and get to know yourself, because the better you know yourself, the better you're going to hone what you're looking for in a partner.
I think it's going to be really important for you to take time to find the things that you enjoy. So what makes you happy being single? Because you don't have to be in a relationship. You can be just fine being single, finding your joy, your purpose, your life. Go do the traveling, do the concert that you didn't, was too expensive. Buy the thing, do the things that you want to do, because then you're not going to have regrets. When you're tied down a little bit more. You're tied down in a relationship, you're tied down with the family. And if you're not quite ready for kids, make sure that you know that you're doing all that you want to do, so that when and if that time comes, you're feeling good about it. I think it's going to be really important to find friendships that are meaningful for you before you're in any type of relationship, because honestly, that's the basic template for any long-term committed relationship, is a friendship. Can I be a good friend to you? Can you be a good friend to me?
Singleness is not a disease. It's not incompletion. It's not brokenness. You are a complete person now. And it's important that you know that you celebrate that, and that you experience it. Find your wholeness now. And as you mentioned, do the things you want to do. Take the mission trip, take the vacation, do the things that are important for you to do within reason. Obviously, don't go into debt, but still. But know that you are a complete person just as you are. You don't have to wait until you are in a relationship to be happy or to be fulfilled. No man will ever fulfill you. You can find fulfillment apart from a relationship. That's when you're ready for a relationship, when you don't have to have one. And the other thing is, you are in relationships. They're just not the romantic relationships. Everyone's got relationships. So maximize those, enjoy them, and leverage them, because those relationships may help you find somebody else if that's what you want, if that's one of your goals. If not, then enjoy being you.
Excellent. Any other questions? Right over there.
What type of advice would you give someone that's dating, and the person that you're dating has a lot of children, let's say 4 or 5? And sometimes, that can cause a problem in a relationship because of the time, just getting along, because a new person has come into the relationship. What type of advice would you give me?
If you're serious about the relationship, if you want it to go someplace, the children have got to be a part of it. You don't just marry a person, you marry a whole blooming family. And so making sure that they're a part of the experience is going to be, now you obviously need alone time with each other to get to know each other and to build the relationship. But to do that with never building the contact or the relationship with the children is going to be detrimental. It's important that they embrace you. It doesn't mean that they always have to be 100% on board with you. But if they have comfort being in your presence, if they can look at you as somebody they trust, somebody they're happy to be around, and eventually celebrate the happiness of their father if he enters into a long-term relationship or a marriage, then that's going to be ideal. But recognize that they're a part of this too. They didn't ask for the breakup of the family, whether it be death or through divorce, and they're not the ones who get to decide on who the new person is. So embracing that and including them as best you are capable is going to be an important thing for you right now.
Mike, let me follow up with that. What if you meet someone who's absolutely beautiful, stunning, you love everything about them, and their kids absolutely hate you?
Then you would not want to live in that toxic environment. If that's going to create a level of toxicity for you, you might be better off, your potential spouse might be better off, and the children might be better off without you there. It's a hard thing to say. But I've also seen people who enter into that kind of a relationship and that kind of marriage, and no one's happy. You can't live with that all the time. And this is even true when the children are adult. There has to be a level of accommodation among all members of the family.
Being able to have those really good conversations with your dating partner. It's going to be really important that you guys are on the same page, because that's the first kind of step. If we can't be on the same page about how you want me to show up just in the dating process, how can we be in the same page if we take this further? So if we're not going to be on the same page, that's something really important to know. So those conversations with the dating partner is really important. Then the second thing is family meetings. So how do we want to do this? First, we got to be on the same page, and then we got to bring these kids in, and we got to talk about what kind of culture do we want? How do we treat each other? Maybe it was different with a different family setting, but now what do we want to do here? And having those type of conversations, even as a dating partner, if it's serious, if you both are on the same page, if the kids can engage in those conversations, is going to be really important, because a blended family is a unique thing. It can be a beautiful thing, but it is a unique thing, so you're going to need more preparation, more planning, more conversations.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well put.
Any other questions? Right over there.
Is it unchristian to use dating apps?
It's not. I think that dating apps, like any other means of meeting an individual, they have positives and they have negatives as well. Nothing really takes the place of face-to-face communication, but you can do some long-term, long-distance relationship building. I did that, and when I remarried at the age of 65. Gail and I had met Pam at a camp. And so most of our communication was over Facebook chat. You know, we were back and forth typing to each other, and eventually my fingers were wearing out. And so I bought a plan on my phone which would give me unlimited calling to Canada. The first conversation took 5 hours. I got my money back in a hurry, brother. So it can be done.
Mike, I got to ask you a question though, before you continue. Did you slide into her DMs, or did she slide into yours?
I don't know how to slide into anything. She must have done the slide, and I'm not sure. So it can be done. But there are drawbacks. We ended up, I was speaking at events, and we were fortunate, we were blessed when she was able to sing at those events. Sometimes I manipulated it a bit, sometimes she did in order to get us at the same event. That provided the face-to-face communication, which I think is necessary in order to understand who each other is. We can see each other in a variety of settings and get to know each other better.
Interesting. Any other questions? Right over there.
How do you know if somebody really loves you or it's just lust?
I think that time is the best thing. You know, take some time to be together. And then their interactions with you, if it's just purely lust, is that what they talk about? Are they asking you to engage in physical activity a lot? Or are you happy doing other things together? What is the locus of your relationship together? And is this just a feeling, or is there a commitment? Are they showing some genuine commitment to you as a person, accepting you for who you are, how you are? Is it just how you look, and just what you do with them? Or is this you as an individual? Do you like me the way I am? Even if sex were off the table, would we still enjoy each other's company? Is this something that we could do together? And be happy together. Because eventually, if you get married and you get old enough, it may be off the table. So what do you have there, you know? Or if one of you gets ill, then it may be off the table. So then the question is, are we happy together even without the physicality?
I heard as you get older, it's try weekly, then it's try weekly, and then it's try weekly.
Yeah.
I heard a quote back in the day where it said something to the effect of, love is using your God-given power of choice to do what's in the best interest of another person, independent of feelings.
Yeah.
And lust is kind of the complete opposite of that, where it's not really even a choice. It's all about you and self-gratification. So if you properly define what love is, because I think that's what the issue is. Oftentimes in society, we don't define what love is for us, and so the two just get conflated. But that's what I would add to that.
You know, the Bible talks a lot about being one in marriage. You realize that was written to people in arranged marriages. So these are not two people who found each other one evening in a crowded room, you know, and the spark of electricity. As mom and dad said, you guys are together, work it out. And even there, you can be one flesh. It's a decision. But that means that they didn't come together because of sex. They didn't come together because of a physical attraction. Because if you look at the garb for women, you know, you can see eyes, hands, and feet. That's about it. And so I married her because she had the most beautiful feet I'd ever seen. It just, you know, it took that off the table, really. And yet we can still be one flesh. We can choose to be one flesh. But that has to do with commitment. Love is a decision more than an emotion. I'm glad for the emotions. They're wonderful. But they're not there 24/7. What does remain is the commitment to do or say that which is in the other person's best interest, the shared activities, the building of a life together. That's what matters.
Dr. Maya, you got the last thought here.
When you know you're in love, you know that you see all their faults and you want them anyway. And if you can list them out, that'd be great.
That doctorate paid off for you.
Sanjay, Dr. Maya, Mike, it's been fantastic. I love this discussion. We could keep talking a lot about this. We've heard today that while dating may come with some challenges, with the right person and the right foundation, you can reap the reward of a great relationship. A big part of that foundation is embracing God's love for you and the other person. While maintaining a healthy sense of self, relationships are not about what you can get out of the other person, but what you can give. It's a mindset that mimics God's love for us. And when both partners have that mindset, you truly have achieved a slice of heaven on earth. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, may you always find that hope at night.